What's up, Podfic Listeners? This is Chapter 5 to Life is Rough, but I'm so fortunate to have met you. Beware, guys, this is an angsty one. You may or may not need tissues depending on how sensitive you are, but if anything involving Izuku crying makes you cry, this is probably, you need tissues. Just fair warning, you know? From the beginning, Izuku had known his neighbors were pro-heroes, even if they had never said anything. Mr. Zashi was obviously present Mike. Well, with his blonde hair and glasses and the plethora of put your hands up radio paraphernalia that seemed to consume his apartment. And Mr. Shouta was obviously a hero too, even if Izuku wasn't quite sure exactly who he was. Most likely someone underground because of the way he carried himself. Back to the wall, eyes casing every entry and exit in a room, standing loose-limbed in case he needed to move quickly. It was how Izuku moved, albeit for very, very different reasons. But heroes or not, Izuku didn't tell them. He didn't tell them he was quirkless. Freak of nature. Weak. Geneless. Not normal. Because he was not afraid, not of them, but of them leaving. His mother had died because he was quirkless. Kachan bullied him because he was quirkless. His father left because he was quirkless, only coming around long enough to pay rent and throw Izuku around a bit once every month. Izuku hadn't been sure if he should be happy or concerned that it had been months since his father last appeared. Izuku knew, of course, that Mr. Shouta and Mr. Hisashi were different. They were kind, feeding him, dressing his wounds, and they were protective, taking care of him when he was sick, and they cared about him. They did. He just didn't want them to stop. But now, because Izuku remained silent about his quirklessness, because he was a no-good, useless Deku, Mr. Shouta was hurt. He was hurt because Izuku couldn't do anything. Izuku had watched an interview with All Might a few years earlier. All Might, the #1 hero in all of Japan, had said something Izuku had never forgotten. "What makes a hero?" the interviewer had asked. All Might had chuckled his deep laugh, the noise echoing in Izuku's own chest and making him light up. All great heroes, All Might had divulged, shared an experience much the same. In a time of great peril, their bodies seemed to move of their own accord. Their feet carried them into danger, and their arms and hands protected those who needed protecting. Their bodies just knew. They were born to be heroes. Izuku had always thought he was born to be a hero. He protected other kids, younger, smaller kids, on the playground when Kachan got too rough. He had protected his mom way back when he was small. But he hadn't protected Mr. Shouta. Mr. Shouta had gotten hurt, was probably dying, because Izuku was helpless to stop the bad guys, the villains. He was a useless, geneless, quirkless Deku. And he always would be. Which was why, while the police cruiser was driving them back to the apartment, Izuku hatched a plan. Mr. Zashi would chase after him, not knowing about his quirklessness and not knowing to stay away, so Izuku would have to distract the man. Or wait for him to take his hearing aids out and fall asleep, which, seeing the way Mr. Zashi's body was slumping with exhaustion, wouldn't take long. But where would Izuku go? He couldn't go home. Not only could Mr. Zashi find him easily right next door, but even if he wasn't able to find Izuku when the boy's father came home, if he heard about what Izuku had done, Izuku would be in for a royal black and blue beating. But Izuku had to run. He had to get away. After all, he couldn't hurt Mr. Zashi or Mr. Shouta if the man would even be alive to hurt if he wasn't there. He couldn't hurt anyone if he didn't exist. It was times like this that Izuku couldn't help but wish he'd never been born. Mr. Zashi, even through his violent exhaustion, lifted Izuku up into his arms, cradling him to his chest like Izuku was 9 months and not 9 years old. And oh yeah, it was his birthday today, wasn't it? And taking Mr. Teddy's leash in the hand that wasn't rubbing circles into Izuku's spine. The touch was comforting, and darn it, why was Izuku crying? He was a big crybaby. Kachan was right. A big, useless, weakling crybaby. Mr. Zashi was murmuring soothing words to Izuku as he struggled to open the apartment door, kicking it shut behind him. Taking Mr. Teddy over to lay down on his bed, Mr. Zashi ruffled the dog's ear and praised him. "Good boy. You did so good today, Teddy," before turning to dodge Spork and Bastard, who weaved between his legs as he went into the guest's bathroom. "Hey, sweetheart," Mr. Zashi murmured a little louder, ceasing his murmurings and pulling Izuku's face into his line of sight with a hand. "I need to go get changed. Do you think you can take a quick shower for me, kiddo? I'll put out some clean clothes for you." Mutely, Izuku nodded. Mr. Zashi hesitated, looking conflicted, before he nodded and crouched to start the shower for Izuku. "I'll only be a few minutes, okay, kiddo? And then I'll be right back. I just need to get out of this shirt, okay?" Oh yeah, because Mr. Zashi's shirt was soaked red with Mr. Shota's blood. "Because you're a useless Deku," Kachan's voice screamed in his head. "Because you're just in the way and stealing everything from me," his father's voice echoed Kachan's. Izuku nodded again, too afraid he'd start crying once more if he spoke. Biting his lip, still looking concerned, Mr. Zashi sighed and ran a gentle hand through Izuku's sweat-matted locks. "I'll just be a minute, sweetheart," he murmured, more to himself than to Izuku. "Just a minute." Izuku waited until Mr. Zashi left, waited until he heard the click of the man's bedroom door shutting, waited until fog started building on the mirror and dampening his skin, before he left the bathroom. Creeping as silently as he could, Izuku tiptoed past the bathroom, past the guest bedroom, past the master bed. Crying. Izuku heard crying. With a start, taking a moment longer than he should have, Izuku realized he heard Mr. Zashi crying. It was muffled, wretched sobs that would have been louder had they not been stifled. Izuku knew that Mr. Zashi must have been trying to keep quiet because of him. Mr. Zashi was trying to keep quiet because of Izuku. Izuku didn't deserve Mr. Zashi's kindness. He didn't deserve Mr. Zashi trying to stay strong for him. Flashes of a large hand swatting him into his bedroom wall lit up behind Izuku's eyes, and he smacked a hand over his mouth to stifle his gasp. Mr. Zashi would never hurt Izuku. Not like his father would. Not in a million, billion, zillion years. Izuku knew it. So why was he getting so scared? Silently, Izuku continued to tiptoe down the hall. He got to the front door, only interrupted once by Bastard, who was probably curious as to why his father wasn't home. Izuku silently apologized to the cat, patting Bastard's head as he sniffled. He'd missed the cats. He'd missed the morning breakfast and the time spent around the table. He'd missed movie nights and morning walks and evening dinners, and time spent with the two greatest fathers he could have ever wanted. He'd miss Mr. Teddy. He'd miss his dads. But he had to go. He had to leave to get out of the apartment before he did any more harm to the people he'd grown to love so fiercely. Right when he got to the door, hand halfway outstretched towards the knob, Izuku felt a cold and wet nose nudge his cheek. Turning sharply, the child gasped and whispered out, "Mr. Teddy?" The dog had limped over from his bed and was now sitting right next to Izuku, his big black eyes seemingly pleading with the boy. Mr. Teddy whimpered, licking Izuku's cheek twice before he whimpered again, laying down at Izuku's feet and lowering his head, nibbling on the boy's shoe in a begging manner. And suddenly Izuku couldn't contain himself. In earnest, Izuku began to sob. Hisashi couldn't breathe. The entire ride home, he'd been unable to take in a proper breath. And then when he got Izuku home and had set the child down, he'd nearly vomited when he realized he was coated in his husband's blood. As gently as he could, Hisashi asked, begged, Izuku to take a shower. He needed to change. He needed to get out of this shirt. He needed to breathe. Izuku. Because he was an awesome, wonderful, thoughtful, and caring and amazing child, nodded and let Hisashi escape for a moment. Because Hisashi couldn't breathe, and he was coated in his husband's blood, and he needed to stay strong for Izuku, but he couldn't breathe. Hisashi ripped his shirt over his head, knocking one of his hearing aids askew, quickly wetting a rag under their bathroom sink. His and Shota's. Shota. Hisashi rubbed down the skin of his chest, wiping away the blood that colored in the black work lines of his tattoos like a grotesque painting. Gagging, Hisashi immediately threw the rag in the garbage to be disposed of later, because right now Izuku needed him. Quickly redressing in a clean shirt, ignoring the way it clung to his damp skin, Hisashi turned and saw Shota's pajamas lying on the floor, discarded in a haste to get ready for the day, and Shota's slippers by the bed, knocked around as the man had likely kicked them off, and Shota's book on the bedside table, a nerdy novel he'd been excited for, although he'd never show it. And suddenly, Hisashi was bubbling up like a pot overboiling. He still couldn't breathe. A wretched sob ripped its way from his lungs, and Hisashi quickly threw himself over the bed, burying his face in a pillow to muffle the sound. His shoulders racked with sobs, Hisashi attempted to console himself by rocking slowly, trying to ignore the weight of the world on his shoulders because he couldn't lose Shouta. And then the hearing aid that had been knocked askew picked up the sound of crying. Not Hisashi's crying. It was a soft, whimpering cry of a child who had known too much of the darkest parts of the world around them, a child who had known abuse and abandonment and hatred for so long. And Hisashi felt immeasurably guilty. Immediately in his brain, Shota's voice snapped at him. Don't be illogical, Zashi. It's normal for you to be feeling these emotions. Just don't forget that he's feeling them too, and the both of you will be alright. The Shota in Hisashi's mind sounded far too much like he was saying goodbye, so Hisashi ignored him in favor of stealing his shoulders and quietly, slowly, making his way out into the hall. In a few short strides, Hisashi was at the helm of the apartment, and his heart cracked. Because Izuku was sitting there, curled into a ball once more, snuggling his face into Teddy's fur in an attempt to stifle his cries. Oh, Izu, Hisashi murmured, gently brushing Teddy over to the side, at the dog's indignation, and reaching down to lift Izuku into his arms. It's okay, sweetheart. You can cry, Sprout. Whether it was the use of Shota's nickname for him, or Hisashi's quiet consolations, Hisashi didn't know. But Izuku suddenly began to wail. It was wretched wails, the kind that a man faced by death of his family, or a child by the death of a father would make. Izuku's shoulders were lurching, his little lungs gasping for air as he wailed and wailed and wailed. Tears and snot were getting all over Hisashi's clean shirt, but the man couldn't bring himself to care. All he could care about right now was Izuku. His kid. His son. There, Izu. There, sweetheart. You're okay. You're gonna be fine. And then Izuku gasped out, Papa. And oh, Hisashi startled, something pinging around in his heart. That was what that felt like. Papa, Izuku sobbed out, rubbing at his eyes with one hand and grabbing at Hisashi's arm with the other. Papa, Daddy is... Papa, Daddy. They were dads. Izuku saw them as his fathers. And oh yeah, Hisashi and Shota would be enacting those late-night plans ASAP. Izuku began again, only for his lungs to begin failing him. Hisashi realized with a start that the child was having a panic attack. Oh, kiddo, it's okay. Breathe, sweetheart. Just breathe with me. Okay? In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. In. Hisashi repeated the words, placing Izuku's hand on his chest so that his child could feel the rise and fall and try to mimic it. It took a while, although time seemed irrelevant anyways, until Izuku managed to calm down. But through trying to soothe his kid, Hisashi managed to get his own breathing under control as well. There, kiddo, Hisashi murmured. You're alright. We're alright. But Izuku's next words caught Hisashi off guard. Papa, I'm sorry. Kiddo, Hisashi started, utterly bewildered, because why was Izuku apologizing? Hisashi and Shota were the heroes. They were the adults. They were the ones who should have been protecting Izuku, and the ones that should have been apologizing. But Izuku cut Hisashi short once more, and the boy stuttered out, It's my fault. Because I'm worthless, geneless, Deku. Geneless. Hearing the slur fall from the kid's lips was startling, especially when the child was referring to himself. And really, Hisashi and Shouta had thought for some time that Izuku may have been quirkless. After all, most kids his age had no qualms or hesitations in showing off their quirks whenever they could, and even Izuku, as shy as he was, showed off in other ways. His hero analysis journals were one of his favorite things to share with them, and Shouta and Hisashi were always eager to share their own thoughts with the boy. It was an exercise in bonding, one that had drawn them all close, so close in fact that Izuku now called Hisashi Papa. But there were other things Hisashi needed to address, namely Izuku's opinion of himself. Gently setting the boy down, Hisashi took a gentle hold of the child's face, a palm on either cheek. It said something that the boy didn't even flinch when Hisashi did so, and the man was nearly taken aback by the utter trust this child had in him. Izuku, I need you to listen to me, sweetheart, okay? Please tell me you're listening. I'm listening, Izuku hiccuped, taking in a deep breath and letting it out through his mouth. Hisashi smiled softly, gently, and as sincerely as he could. You are not worthless, and you are not a nobody. You are not any of the terrible things people have told you in the past, kiddo. But I'm quirkless, and I don't care, Izuku, Hisashi spoke emphatically, pummeling past the child's defenses and making Izuku let loose a tiny gasp. Shouta doesn't either. We love you no matter what, and there's nothing wrong with being quirkless. Do you hear me, kiddo? I don't understand. Izuku tread off into hiccups. Hisashi shushed him quietly, running a hand through the boy's matted green locks. I know, sweetheart, but I'll keep telling you until you believe it, okay? There is nothing wrong with you. You are not worthless or useless, and you are certainly not geneless, okay? The slur felt horrible on Hisashi's tongue, but he needed so desperately for Izuku to understand him, to know that what Hisashi said was true. Even if Izuku couldn't believe it now, he would one day. Hisashi would make sure of it. I love you so much, kiddo, Hisashi said. After a beat of quiet, the stillness only interrupted by Izuku's heavy breathing and the meowing of Bastard and Spork in the background, Izuku mumbled, Promise? And oh, if Hisashi's heart couldn't break any more for his boy. I promise, Izu. Do you want a hug? Izuku let loose one more brief sob as he nodded frantically, lunging into Hisashi's arms before the man could even tilt forward to embrace the child. Wrapping his arms around his kid, Hisashi breathed into Izuku's sweaty hair, leaving a kiss on the crown of the boy's head. Humming quietly, he rocked back and forth until Izuku's heavy breathing stilled. Are you ready for a bath, kiddo? Mutely, Izuku nodded. All throughout the child's bath, Izuku yawned and rubbed at bleary eyes. Hisashi washed the child's hair, rinsing thoroughly and putting a leave-in conditioner in the child's curls that would leave them soft and silky. It was something Hisashi had bought for Shouta, something the man refused to use and left sitting in their guest bathroom. When Izuku began listing off to the side, Hisashi chuckled and dropped the towel over the child's head. Get dried off, kiddo. I'll go shower and grab you some clothes, okay? Okay, Papa. And there it was again. Papa. The only thing that could make this better was Shouta being there. And not being in the hospital bleeding out from a knife wound, likely fighting for his life. Showering as quickly as he could, forgoing his usual hair routine, which he knew he'd regret later, Hisashi grabbed a fresh pair of boxer shorts and a small hoodie from their dresser before returning to the guest bathroom, knocking on the door, opening it at Izuku's tiny, "Come in." Hisashi saw that Izuku had dressed back into his underwear and t-shirt. Here you go, kiddo. I didn't think we'd have much your size, but I tried. A short shrug from the man made Izuku giggle, and Hisashi mentally counted that as a win. Izuku dressed in the hoodie, a hot pink monstrosity with cats on the front that Namuri had bought for Shouta as a joke. It had somehow accidentally been thrown in the dryer where it shrunk 2 sizes too small, and tugged on the boxer shorts, stumbling around as he did so. Socks? The little boy all but begged, even though he didn't need to. Hisashi would do anything for his kid at the moment, and Hisashi retrieved the fluffiest pair of socks in the house for the boy. The crew's socks went all the way up to his knees where the boxer shorts just barely didn't cover, and the hoodie covered the child from mid-thigh down his arms, a good few inches past his fingertips. "Nap time, kiddo," Hisashi murmured to the boy as Izuku yawned widely once more. "Mr. Teddy," Izuku bumbled, and Hisashi chuckled as he picked the boy up. He may have grunted a bit too, but it was good that Izuku was finally gaining weight eating with them. He was still far too small for his age, but he'd put on some muscle and a good amount of chub for a kid. "Sure, sweetheart, we'll get Teddy." As if summoned by his name, Teddy appeared in the living room as the duo entered it, giving a soft boof as Hisashi gently tossed Izuku onto the couch. The child giggled a bit, but ultimately wrapped an arm around Teddy's neck as the dog jumped onto the couch and let his eyes flutter shut. "Good night, Izu. I'll wake you up in a little bit, okay?" He needed to call Tsukuichi to get an update on Shouta. If anyone could wrangle the truth out of a nurse on Hisashi's husband's condition, it would be the human lie detector. And besides, Hisashi needed to call Namuri and Tensei and Shota's moms, and Hisashi let out a yawn, rubbing a hand over his face. Looking over at his kid nestled up on the couch with their dog, the man couldn't help but smile. He was worried, yes, but Shouta was strong and stubborn, the most mulish man Hisashi had ever had the pleasure of falling in love with. He'd be all right. Hisashi could close his eyes for a moment, just a single moment, and then he'd wake up and drag Izuku to the hospital, where Shouta would be recovering from surgery. Everything was going to work out fine. Someone, anyone, please tell me why I thought it was a good idea to do these podfics knowing I'm already a huge crybaby to angst. Any sort of negative emotion coming from Izuku at any age, to be honest, because I obviously didn't think things through, and I nearly sobbed my heart out at so many points in this chapter that I'm actually praying and hoping that you guys also cried along with me in this chapter, because even though I'm reading this to you guys and I sound totally normal, trust me, I paused a million times trying to choke back a sob. For example, as I was editing, I literally gave myself goosebumps listening to my version of Izuku call Hisashi Papa for the first time. That's kind of an accomplishment for me, I think. Giving myself goosebumps with my own voice that I hear every day. I don't know. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Remember, leave a comment, leave a like, let me know what you think. Have a good one, stay safe.